Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Très heureux d'être avec vous aujourd'hui, même en virtuel. Être avec vous pour à l'occasion de cette 28e édition de la Conférence de Montréal. Une édition qui se déroule en mode hybride, mais très important quand même de la tenir annuellement pour poursuivre le dialogue, surtout en ces temps assez compliqués de pandémie, de guerre, de changement climatique, de perte de biodiversité. Le thème de cette année, mener la transition verte, très en phase avec l'actualité. La relance économique post-pandémie, sur laquelle tous les paliers de gouvernement partout à travers le monde travaillent très fort, doit se faire de manière durable et responsable, en tenant compte non seulement des impératifs économiques, mais aussi, bien sûr, et de plus en plus, des impacts environnementaux, des impacts sociaux et des impacts sur la santé. La crise climatique est l'un des plus grands défis de nos sociétés et nous devons, et nous sommes capables de le surmonter. Il existe un très fort consensus scientifique à l'effet qu'il faut agir dès maintenant, car l'état du climat est critique à l'échelle planétaire. Il faut parler dorénavant d'urgence climatique, ce qui signifie action maintenant, ici à Montréal, mais partout dans le monde. Tous les acteurs de la société, qu'ils soient du secteur public ou du secteur privé, doivent intervenir, doivent agir, doivent collaborer. Et ça nous inclut tous, vous, toi et moi. Tout le monde doit se sentir concerné. Et la recherche est certainement essentielle dans la lutte au changement climatique pour trouver de nouvelles solutions qui vont contribuer à résoudre plus efficacement ce très grand défi. S'attaquer à de grands défis demande de l'audace, de l'ambition, de l'ouverture et de la volonté, beaucoup de la volonté à court terme, à moyen terme, à long terme, de la volonté pour changer les façons de faire, que ce soit en termes d'habitude de vie, d'investissement, de production et de consommation des connaissances. Depuis plusieurs années, les fonds de recherche que je dirige font la promotion d'approches intersectorielles en recherche. Cette approche va beaucoup plus loin que de simples réunions ou de juxtaposition de plusieurs disciplines. Il veut dire qu'on doit travailler ensemble à l'élaboration de nouvelles stratégies de recherche. Il faut de l'audace, il faut de l'engagement de tous et chacun. C'est aussi l'essence du panel qui se tiendra dans quelques minutes. Nous avons voulu réunir des panélistes de différents horizons, de différentes disciplines, que ce soit des acteurs de la recherche, du monde économique, de l'agriculture ou de la finance, afin d'étendre la discussion et de trouver de nouvelles avenues favorisant une transition verte. Avec le thème « Une économie diversifiée pour tous dans un monde connecté », nous souhaitons faire la démonstration qu'il existe déjà de multiples voies ou de modèles économiques, des modèles économiques plus écologiques, de l'économie circulaire, de l'économie sociale et bien d'autres, qui peuvent se conjuguer au sein de l'économie globalisée et contribuer très positivement à l'élaboration de nouvelles stratégies pour réussir dans le grand défi que représentent les changements climatiques. Encore une fois, nous devons agir et saisir l'urgence climatique et faire preuve de beaucoup de détermination. J'ai la profonde certitude que la science, que la recherche, partout dans le monde, font partie de la solution pour changer les choses. Merci à tous et en particulier aux panélistes Jérôme, Rasmus, Isaham et Moran pour leur participation à la conférence d'aujourd'hui. J'aurais beaucoup aimé être avec vous, mais je suis présentement en Afrique. On va sûrement aussi discuter de changements climatiques et d'agriculture et de perte de biodiversité. Bonne discussion, bon congrès à tous.
Hello, bonjour. Thank you so much for that introduction. I am very glad to have you all here, and we are in a very interconnected world with people on conference call as well as in person. So this is a great sample of where we're going, I suppose. So I would like to introduce a little bit more about our panelist. To my immediate left is Professor Jérôme Dupras, who teaches at Université du Québec in Outaouais, where he holds the Canada Research Chair in Ecological Economics. He'll tell us a little bit more about his research work, but one of the more fascinating things about him is on the French-speaking music scene. He is a member of the Cowboys Fringants, Les Cowboys Fringants, oui. The Frisky Cowboys, which is actually the best-selling French band in Canadian music history. So very multi-talented, as many of our speakers are. To his left is Moran Hadad, who is president and founder of Floresta. He is a polytechnic engineer who specializes in artificial intelligence and neuroscience. And again, he will tell us a little bit more about how he's been fascinated by the merger of social responsibility and technology and is looking to always change the status quo. Joining us remotely is Dr. Ismaha El Wafi. She is the chief scientist of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. She has nearly 2 decades of experience in agricultural research and development in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. And she is known for promoting neglected crops, non-fresh water in agriculture, and women in science. And she holds a PhD in genomics. And our other guest online is Rasmus Bjørngaard, who is a co-founder and CEO of NextFood, which is a food and climate technology company using vertical farming. NextFood solutions aim to save water, land use, fertilizer, and reduce carbon dioxide pollution. So with that, I would like various panelists to weigh in, but let me start with Jérôme. Jérôme, tell us what is ecological economics and what sort of naughty questions is it trying to solve?
Well, ecological economics is the only economic model we can afford today. With the Remi told us about the climate collapse, the biodiversity collapse. So ecological economics is a branch of economics that bridges with other science like physics, ecology, and other social science. And the aim of this field is to study the interaction of human society with ecosystems. So we're looking at interdependency, co-evolution of our different systems, and the aim is to really guide private and public action. So let me give you a quick example of what is ecological economics to one of the key concepts of this field, which is the social metabolism. So we have a metabolism in our body, but we also have a metabolism in our society, where matter and energy flows. So with one of our postdoc at the chair, we crunched data for 2 years and to look at the evolution of the energetic profile of agriculture in Québec from the late 1800s to nowadays. And back in time with peasant agriculture, you were going in the field and you had human energy with animal energy, soil fertility, you had the sun, and with 1 unit of energy from this labor, you could create 20 energetic units in food products. In the mid-20th century, with the Green Revolution, we were able to develop our irrigation capacity, high-yielding varieties, inputs such as nitrogen, phosphorus, mechanization, etc. So in the field, with 1 unit of energy, we were creating 1 unit of energy in terms of food products. And today, with the industrialization of agriculture, we need 4 units of energy to create 1. So if we look at indicators such as food production per per superficie for 1 hectare. We are 10 times more efficient than back in the days. But if we look at the energetic profile, we are 80 times less efficient than 150 years ago. So it really depends on the kind of lens we're using to look at this model. And I think ecological economics with this kind of example can help us to recognize that this is an unsustainable system that we're creating. So this is a local example, but we can bridge it with many global processes and dynamics. Today, 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries are already explode. We are over developing these limits. There's 1 million of species that are threatened. So we really need to question the real basis of our economic model. And I think that ecological economics can contribute to this.
Oh, great. The next question is, again, for various panelists, but let me start with Ismahan. How do major international organizations, such as the UN, view these economic approaches to ecology? Can they be integrated on a global scale?
So going back to what Jérôme said, I think really what we understand right now is that our economic model, it's not working. Our economic model that was based on increasing productivity, and we were unfortunately focusing too much on quantity and not so much on nutrition and quality of food, was really at the expenses of land degradation, of biodiversity loss, and depletion of natural resources. And many of those natural resources are non-renewable. So definitely we need to change the business model to a model that balances production with environment protection, and most importantly, sustainability. How long can we carry on with the new model? And I think the new model is very important today more than any other day, because we are at a critical juncture whereby we are clearly falling behind to ending hunger. We just published, FAO published last week, the SOFI report. And in the SOFI report, we have now 828 million people that are hungry. Those are the number, the estimate for 2021. And if we look at how many have been added in the last 2 years since COVID started, it's 150 million more people. So between 2019 and 2021, we have 150 million more hungry people. So, and in the same time, as Jérôme mentioned, and also the chief scientist, it's when we look at the numbers in terms of environment and emission and disasters that are happening, we could see clearly that we are not going towards the right path. So we need definitely in a model, an ecological model, I don't know how we're going to call it, but we need a new economic models, because by the economy takes over. So we need really to invest in protecting nature and protecting ecosystems, and that could be through protecting our soil, protecting our biodiversity, protecting our water resources, and also reducing the impact of the ag sector on the climate change, on the climate at large. So we need definitely to adopt an integrated approach, and I think that's really the approach of the UN, is that this, to make impact, it has to go global, and it has to be integrated approach. And this integrated approach should look differently at human interaction with the environment and with the other species. And here maybe I can bring you 2 examples of how do we do so. One of them is the One Health, and the other one is the ecosystem restoration. So if we look at the One Health approach, and Canada has been always a huge promoter of the One Health. I remember we started discussing it in the early 2000s when I used to work with Agriculture, Agri-Food Canada and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And the One Health is important because it recognizes the interconnectedness between people, animal, and their shared environment. It is an integrated approach, and our global response to COVID-19 pandemic highlighted very much the need for all of us to have a coordinated action and coordinated program, coordinated policies, and definitely FAO, from our stand as a UN technical agency, we are very much promoting the One Health approach as part of our agri-food system transformation. because we should keep in mind that what we are looking for, it's health on all aspects, health for people, health for animals, health for plants, and health for our environment. The second global action that I think could be an example for an ecological economy, it's the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. We are in that decade right now, and it is led by UNEP and FAO. And what does it do, that decade of ecosystem restoration? It's really for all of us to bring up our awareness and our action towards a global approach to protect and revive our global ecosystem for the benefit of people and the planet. It is really a very important opportunity, as we are talking agri-food system, to look at how could we re-engineer, transform our agri-food system from a system that has been producing few species only, and we are concentrating our food basket around 125 from the plant side, for example, to a much more diverse system, agri-food system, that is sustainable, that is efficient, that is inclusive, and that is really very much taking efficiency in perspective. So the example of Jérôme of the efficiency from nutrient, it's very saddening right now that scientifically we know that the same seed, if you put it now in the ground, it's producing less nutrient than 50 years ago. And the reason behind is the environment. Some of the reasons or some of the theories that are coming, it's basically the carbon dioxide in the concentration of carbon, the percentage in the air. So if we are making our nutritious or our food to be less nutritious because of the environment, this is very, very alarming, and we need to really rethink it, and we need to develop better ways of producing our food, better ways of producing more quality, more nutrient with less input.
So that's a great segue for Moran. Moran, if the current model is not working, what is the solution? And can you talk a little bit about your company's model?
Well, I think everybody here pretty much agree on the fact that we can no longer adapt our environmental aspiration to our economical model. And we need to start in developing models that are adapted to our ecological aspirations. Another very important thing that Ismahan said is that we need to take into account people. In the end of the day, we need to make the entire operation accessible to people. So if we want people to be responsible and to take the responsibility within the economical model, we need to build a model that allows people to act. One of the reactions that I get the most when I discuss ecological issues with people is that they tell me, you're right about what you say, but what can I do? And our goal with Floresta was to develop economical models that work and that allow people to take this responsibility, people and companies. So basically what we've done, talking about natural ecosystem restoration, which is our main goal, we developed a model that makes reforestation and conservation financially profitable. By doing so, we allow people to interact and to take the responsibility. Our model is based on a technological process we've developed that allows us to grow teak wood, to accelerate the growth of teak wood. And we use this financial engine to finance reforestation and conservation. And again, when we talk about people, we should also talk about the people around the area where the reforestation and conservation are conducted. Environmental impact cannot be looked upon alone. It always has to be in junction with social impact. Because in the environment where the trees are and the animals are, there's also communities and people. So what we've done is create a model where we have those three legs: environmental impact, social impact, and financial engine that go together. In order to finance a model like this, we decided to decentralize the ownership of the commercial plantation. Just to give you an example about the size of it, we're taking our model unit is 17,000 hectares, out of which 15,000 hectares are natural forest, where we do reforestation and conservation. Around 1,300 hectares are a social impact land where we work with communities to create better livelihood and to create circular economy. If we take the case of Cambodia, where we have our pilot, we develop a community forest that allows communities to shift from illegal logging towards legal logging, allows them to have a better livelihood, getting out of the illegal activity, and slowly we can shift them towards agriculture and new agriculture techniques. And of course, prioritize quality over quantity and have closed circular economies for the communities. And next to it, we have 700 hectares of commercial teak plantation. That's a commercial teak plantation where we cut trees and sell over a cycle of 7 years. And the model that we develop economically is a financial tool called a tree note, where we issue a note per tree, that allows people to buy ownership of one tree. And when we cut the tree and replant, they can get profit. So the bottom line here is that we created a tool that allows us to do profitable impact, where we can, one tree note costs $100, so we can put $100 on the table, recover $200 in the end of the 7 years, which is around 11.5% return, and in the same time contribute to social impact and environmental impact and make an offset of 3.6 tons of CO2 per year over a cycle of 7 years.
And how are you getting a buy-in from the local community? Is it actually having an impact on illegal harvesting, or is it more profitable than illegal harvesting?
It is more profitable for everybody, and that's a key issue. It's a very good question in the sense that if you want to resolve a problem, you must take into account in your solution all the elements that are part of the problem. And all the elements mean all the elements, meaning the communities, but also the governments, the international community, the buyers, but also the illegal activity and the mafias that are around this type of elements. So by shifting from illegal activity towards legal activity, we're creating a situation where everybody wins. The farmer makes more money. He doesn't have to go 10 kilometers into the jungle on a motorbike to cut a tree and get it out. I saw them in action. That's a very, very hard work. So now they have an organized plantation when they can do that. The person buying from them now buys a little bit more expensive, but instead of selling the wood illegally in the border, they can actually have certified wood, socially responsible wood that they can sell more expensive. So in this system, everybody makes more money.
That's great. So Rasmus, let's talk a little bit about your perspective. So what is the model that you see as going to be the next model, especially with vertical farming?
The next model, I think it's a number of different models, what I'm very much for is the ability to experiment. So coming from the entrepreneurial side, that's probably not a big surprise. I think we need to have an ecosystem that lets experiments, if I may call that an experiment, Moran, like yours or my own, have a chance in for our future world. I don't think we can plan our way through these challenges. It's something that we need to try our way through, just as we have done with many other things. But we can, however, facilitate that the conditions for our new companies, the new structures that we need, are in place. And today, for good reasons, they are made for the world of yesterday. So new initiatives very often bump into red tape, regulation problems, different things that governments can do something about and must do something about. And of course, one big thing here is also capital. So the capital system, the venture capital system, is not really made for the needs of climate startups, impact startups. They are a different animal than making a software as a service on the internet. Very often we have to do with more CapEx heavy investments, longer term investments. And we need to change, really, if we are serious about doing something about that, doing something about impact, to walk the talk, we must change the way that we fund things and how we look at risk, how we basically dare experiment with new solutions, what to do in the future.
So tell us a little bit more about how vertical farming plays into that. I mean, vertical farming in the last 10 or 15 years has really taken off, but why has it been so successful in trying to rethink and disrupt the way we farm?
Yeah, so you could say it's really new and it's really old at the same time. So it's been around for a long time, but within the last 5 years and a bit more, it's really taken off. Really, I think within the last year, there's been built more vertical farm square meters than ever before, something like that. So it's really exploding in that way. And much of the reason is technology improving, and it's specifically LED technology, so we can get the light for growing plants indoor efficiently and economically efficient, and of course also climate efficient. Those two things are very, very connected. So in vertical farming, the one thing that has a cost is electricity. It costs something to replace the sun, as we're basically doing. That may sound sometimes at first sight, it sounds like, does that ever make sense? But actually it does, if you look more into it. And what we've seen is that all over the world there has been a strong move in scaling this up. We're still very early in this new industry's life. The segments that are mostly addressed are leafy vegetables, it's herbs, it's lettuces, but we can grow anything. And today we hear a lot about it in Western countries, but really it's probably just because of our lens. Japan, Singapore are investing heavily in vertical farming. They've been some of the first to see the potential in it. And now we had some comments about the more than 800 million people in the world that are food unsafe. Vertical farming is something that could change that. When populations go from poverty into middle class, we see that they demand and buy better food, more nutritional food, maybe in regions of the world that don't have as much access to nutritional food. And do you then want to build up a traditional agricultural system, or should the new cities in 2050, many of the cities in the top 10 biggest cities with more than 30 million inhabitants will be in developing parts of the world, like Kinshasa in Congo, in Bangladesh, in Nigeria. Are we going to build up a new, such a big agricultural system, or will they leapfrog, just like these regions did with mobile phones? Will they leapfrog into vertical farming and grow many of their crops there? So I think we really have to think about things in a different way. We are addressing the water problem. We save 98% water and so on. So this is a different way of thinking. It really, in many ways, it doesn't have much to do with farming. But think of it as the full food supply chain, and think about it as food supply, basically.
So this is a question for all four of our panelists, but let me start with Rasmus. So can the market regulate itself toward an ecological economy, or does the state need to intervene? For example, with vertical farming, have there been obstacles that various states have put up, or do you think that there is ways that it can be encouraged?
I mean, we are overcoming some of those obstacles. They're still there. So we're basically fighting against subsidies for traditional agriculture. I'm from Denmark, and in Denmark, I've been told that we have 168 different subsidies for traditional agriculture. There is none for vertical farming. Nevertheless, we compete on standard prices in retail. We do all the technology. We run the farms and all that. We would like to have a level playing field. I can go into detail, but the short answer is that it's definitely necessary, both in food and in energy, where the request is really just that we get a level playing field. So please just remove the subsidies and the regulatory frameworks that benefit old ways that are less sustainable.
So Ismahan, can you talk a little bit about that as I suppose the representative of the UN here, or FAO? Can the state encourage encourage new ecological models successfully?
the power of public policies is amazing. So I don't think we can do it without public policy, and both public policy at the national level as well as the international level. So we need really to rethink our subsidies, our policies, our support to the private sector, our way we work with the private sector. So when we talk about the need to change the finance and the capital, how capital is moving or invested, it's to really, I fully agree with Rasmus and Moran. It's very much needed. So if you think about it, right now, the wheat that we are so much hanged on, all of us, and I'm a big eater of bread, I should say, as I'm originally from Morocco, it's really very much subsidized. So the production per se, it's not reflecting the right price, but for example, subsidies in Canada for the producers, but also the receiving country and the buying, it doesn't reflect the right price. There's a huge difference as well. We have been talking about people seeing subsidies in the south, but the same thing is needed in the north. I like the example from Denmark. I have been talking to many farmers from Tunisia and Morocco that they are saying our production, it's more expensive than a production from Europe because of the subsidies in Europe. So the policy is a must. If we are moving towards a sustainability and a better economy that really reflects beyond the food cost, only the cost per se, but also the social cost and the environmental cost, we need policies to incentivize all actors and to also disincentivize the private sector. So right now, if you look at the private sector that is in the fast food and in the junk food business, it's amazing of their penetration of the market. You go to the most remote area in Uganda or in India or in Morocco, and you find them. And you ask the question, how come they made it this far? It's because they have a very, very powerful reach out, and they have a huge power of really making things happen. But what policy will do to them? What policy to disincentivize them from fast food and junk food and to be more nutritious, zero carbon or at least low carbon economy or value chain. So we need policy, and we need it big time, both nationally, as I said, regionally and internationally.
So Moran, how do you see the state helping or hurting entrepreneurs like you in some of
So first of all, I think that as Ismahan said, policies are very important, but it's as important to think about adoption of those policies downwards towards people. In the end of the day, what we do is created actually a new action vehicle that we call contribution, that it's somewhere in between donation and investment. We say it's kind of a donation with the purpose of profit. And this thing today is not regulated. And so we're working with institutions such as the UN and the WTO, looking to regulate that and to see how regulation around such an idea, such a vehicle can be constructed in terms of regulatory terms, but also in terms of fiscal and in terms of incentive to people to play the game. But in the end of the day, the adoption is the public. People need to understand what they do to take responsibility on their actions, maybe environmental action, but also in terms of the way they eat, and understanding that eating healthy in the end of the day is important for them. More than for the regulator, right? So I think the government has a lot to do, governments in general and supranational organizations have a lot to do to help entrepreneurs that have innovative and disruptive ideas to put them on the market, but the public needs to play its role.
Jérôme, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't you be our referee here? What things can the state do well, and what things do you think that the state needs to step aside?
Well, we have a large set of tools. A market is not a finality, it's a tool. A subsidy, a policy, these are tools as well that answer a political will, the will of the public, of the consumer. So I think the real question here is governance. It's to address the international trade. Then the tool will follow. That will be like a cascade process. So we know the tricks of the market when we talk about internalizing the externality, paying for the pollution. These have been put in place for 50 years, and we know that it's unsuccessful. This doesn't work. So we really need to work with the tools that we have, the institution that we have, but having, and I really recognize what Moran's saying, to have these institutions at national and supranational level that will put the good regulating principles that will then cascade, precaution principle, subsidiary principles, and this will help us to decolonize the economy, to decarbonize our economy.
Ismahan, you had touched a little bit on the entrenched forces that are lobbying to keep some of these agricultural subsidies in place. So how can we overcome these forces? I mean, in the United States, I just remember when President Biden first introduced his climate proposal, the farm lobby started taking out ads saying, or started, I shouldn't say taking out ads, but on talk radio, it started being promoted as the president's trying to take away your hamburger, by trying to discourage, farming and agriculture. So how, I'm sure there were similar things in Canada. So where, probably any move against, the dairy industry is probably met with a lot of resistance. So how can we adopt solutions that sort of can overcome or maybe buy-in with some of these powerful agri-food forces?
So I think, PJ, today we are much more aware of what's happening. I think really I have to salute IPCC for their reports. The International Panel on Climate Change have really brought.
We'll come back to Ismahan. Jérôme, can you talk a little bit about how we can overcome some of these forces?
Well, I think this is with the power of the institution, the economic, but also really recognize the real leadership that we're seeing here in Quebec, in Canada, and elsewhere. It comes from the young generation. So I think we need to leave space to these new leaders. We also need to leave room for financial institutions that really want to have a strong agenda for decarbonation and supporting new initiatives. So I think it's to really reopen the space of our economy. That is.
I think if I may, I think that I would answer the question with two words. It's alternative and time. Alternatives and time. First of all, if we want change to happen, we cannot expect people to just change their habits because we want to. We need to offer them an alternative that makes it worth their while to change. That's the first thing. So if we talk about the dairy industry, we need to have alternatives that people would prefer. That's the first thing. Personally, I can talk about a Swedish company doing oat milk that made me stop drinking cow milk because I just think it's better in terms of taste. And time is the thing that we need to understand, that some things take time. And some things in life cannot be shortened. A woman gives birth in 9 months. We cannot make it 3, even if we really, really want to. And this is something where I would really agree with you, Jérôme, is we have an excellent new generation that has very high values and that really goes the right way. And if we give them the time to develop their ideas, and then we give them the space to implement them, I think we're in a good path.
I think we have Ismahan back. Did you want to continue talking about how powerful are the forces of agri-food in trying to influence policy?
Yeah, absolutely, and apologies for the connections. So just to follow up on what Moran was saying, I agree that we need time, we need awareness, we need all the actors to come on board. So it's not time to just really have the push only from the policy side, but it has to be from people. It has to be from farmers. It has to be from NGOs and civil society. So we have really, I think we are in a better position to make the transition right now. We understand fully the impact of what's happening. We understand what I could add is the power of data and the inequalities, two areas that I would want to really focus on. Data, it's right now, if we look our global agri-food system, it's very inefficient. WHO says that any product cross border at least once. So what do you think about it? Why should I produce this in Congo? And then it goes to France. And then it gets transformed to this product. And then it moves to Denmark to do something else and come back in the market in Congo 100 times more expensive for the farmer that produces it. So the inefficiency of the global system has to be unrevealed, and only data can do that. And I think now we have big data for traceability. We should have the same thing, big data to understand efficiency of agri-food system, particularly in terms of globalization and movement of good. The second area that I think it's very important for us to keep in mind, it's inequalities between global north and global south, and within the same country as well. So we need really to address inequalities, because inequalities could be one of the issues that we will face in the transition toward a more ecological economy. So right now, you can't ask a person that can hardly have anything to eat to be environmental. So if they can't produce in any way, they cannot produce. So we need really to reduce inequalities and provide know-how, technology to certain parts of the world that can produce sustainably. And I could give an example of Africa, for example. Africa, it's hardly producing, it's importing a bill of $130 billion of food annually. Whereas it's a continent that has arable land, that has water, that has resources to multiply or to produce more and better. And the roadblock, it's mostly technology. They don't have access to technology, and hence they don't have access to finance, and hence it's not producing its potential. Irrigation, for example, in Africa, it's only about 7% versus 57% irrigation in Asia. So if we provide only irrigation technologies that are really reducing the cost of the usage of water per produce or per calorie or per nutrient even, you could multiply the production in Africa by 5 times very easily. If you go to much more high tech, you could do much more. So I think data, awareness, looking at the inequalities are a must as we are moving towards a more environmental friendly agri-food systems.
Rasmus, can you talk a little bit about whether vertical farming can be one of the solutions to places like Africa and Asia? Or are there, because you need so much intensive electricity, are there difficulties in implementing some of these new technologies in places that need more resources to produce food?
That's not a problem. That's the short answer. So imagine Lagos being, 2050, 34 million people. How are you going to feed that city? I used to work in Africa, and now we have to be careful not to make Africa into one thing, right? It's a pretty big continent. The same with Asia. Some of the countries in Asia are the ones leading in this technology field and have been working most on it. Japan especially have been really, really ahead of the pack. Singapore has an amazing food strategy for a very small country. And so I think actually we might get some solution the other way. Now, our strategy, if you will, it's one of the long-term ones, is to develop it in this part of the world, in Europe and in the Western world, and then basically move it to Africa and change or to other parts of the world and change it to so it fits. The water part is one of the reasons why you would use it. For instance, there's a lot of interest in the Middle East. The electricity is often thought of as solar panels. And if you have the space, then you don't really have an issue there. So the big promise is also that you can electrify your energy usage. So you can wean our food production off this fossil fuel addiction. And that's super, super important for a renewable food production.
Jérôme, what can we learn from Québec in some of its successes and failures in addressing agri-food solutions and climate change?
Well, in terms of climate change, Quebec have been taking this question seriously since the mid-2000s, so by creating a green fund and accompanying programs and policies. So there's been first, I need to say that we stand on the shoulders of giants, because in the 70s, we really developed the hydropower capacity of the province. So now we have a very low, even zero carbon energy profile in Quebec. So we can have that leadership role at the continental level because of historical decisions. So this is very important to remind. You were talking about time. When we're taking decision, we may be going to collect the fruits in decades. But more recently, we've put in place great initiatives, such as a carbon market in 2013. Last spring, Quebec passed a law on the ban of exploration and exploitation of fossil fuel forever on Quebec territory. So this is very unique in North America. So these are the good things. But on the other side, the plan to address the climate change issue, it's really based on the same economic model than forever. And this is true for most of the country. So we're talking about a climate change fight with the development of new markets, with technology, with electrification of transport, which are a large part of the solution. But if we don't address topics such as overconsumption, carbon budgets, the review of our indicators to measure the progress and the development, this whole problem and the solution will still be left unaddressed. So I think Quebec can do this. We see some initiative that really want to shake the tree, and I'm hopeful that this will come in the coming years. And I'm also hopeful that Quebec will play a strong leadership role in North America and maybe worldwide. And there's going to be the COP15 in Montreal in next December on biodiversity. So this is a huge opportunity for us to take action and take this opportunity of leadership.
Moran, what are some of the research and development ideas that you're excited about? What are you sort of seeing that you think might be a good thing in the future, especially for wood harvesting, since that's your field?
Well, first of all, about exciting technologies outside of wood harvesting, I've seen a lot of very exciting technologies. I'm lucky to travel a lot and meet entrepreneurs and scientists and technologists. And one of the things that we would like to do with Floresta on the longer run, we've noticed that there is a gap between the entrepreneurs and governments and financiers, that actually those two groups don't speak the same language. So it's very difficult for them to interact. It makes it very difficult for entrepreneurs to access funds, and very difficult for financiers and government to find good projects. So I've met a lot of project leaders telling me, I've seen myself thousands of incredible projects, and they all tell me we cannot find money. And then I meet with institutional funds that tell me we have a lot of money, we don't have any projects. So one of the things we would like to achieve on a second stage is to be able to gather those entrepreneurs, those ideas and technologies, and to help them implement under some kind of a common umbrella. And one of the exciting technologies that I've seen, I can give you two examples. One of them is very arrogant, but I really liked, and the other one is very useful. The arrogant one is because we talked about irrigation. Agriculture develops in the rhythm of irrigation. That's a constant. So we started from natural irrigation, we went to flood irrigation, sprinklers, drip irrigations, then high pressure drip irrigations, and then communicative drip irrigations, and so on and so forth. And it's true that and of course, vertical farming, that's also aquaponics, etc. And it's true that we get more and more efficient in the way that we manage water and nutrients, etc. But in the end of the day, any type of irrigation will have waste. So I met a group of kids in Israel that told me, okay, so we understood that irrigation is the problem. So instead of trying to improve irrigation, we thought that we'll be better just changing the soil. So let's create a new soil. And I thought it was extremely arrogant to think, okay, I'll create a new soil. But they did just that, and they have a new type of soil today that they're testing. They're doing it for indoors planting now, but we're helping them to set up a prototype in a pilot project in Cambodia in the beginning of next year. So that's exciting. I don't know how useful it's going to be, but that's exciting. Another technology is a scientist that managed to create polymers out of seaweed. So we can actually create fully biodegradable plastic. We talked a lot about agriculture and food, but plastic is a real problem. So that's very exciting for me to just the idea of being able 5 years from now to have fully biodegradable plastic. That's something that I'm really excited about.
So this is just a quick 20, 30-second question for each of our panelists to conclude. Are you optimistic about the world's ability to move toward net zero emissions by 2050 or even in the next 15 years? Let's start with Jérôme.
I'm a realistic optimist. Though I think we need to acknowledge that the ecosystem, the world's ecosystem are changing, so there will be huge transformation in the coming decades. So, and these transformation will have impact on our economy, on the sanitary measures. So we need to acknowledge that we're going to live on a totally different planet within 100 of years. But I'm also optimistic because I see the young generation. I see the agenda of this very conference being totally different from 10 years ago. So there's a movement. We know that this is on the top of our priority. And well, I think we need to still be hopeful just for our kids. So.
Yeah. Ismahan, are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I'm optimistic. I think we are at a point in knowledge that we never had it before. The examples that Moran brought forward, there's huge knowledge that we came to know, and I think we need a really strong coalition of willing to make it happen. And I think the policy side, be it again national, regional, international, is huge. So if we want it, if we have the will to do it, we will do it. It's doable with the technology we have, but we need really to align all programs. We need to align programs from the energy, the food, the climate, and we need again to use big data to understand really the climate and to monitor the carbon. So in terms of agriculture, I always say it's the only sector that emit but also sequester. And with technology, we could multiply the sequestration capability of the ag sector much more. I can't close without really putting a point on the blue economy and the fisheries at large, the oceanoculture and fisheries at large. We need to use it much more because we could have better nutrient, better proteins, better food sources with less carbon or less environmental footprint as well. So I think it's doable. Youth have a huge responsibility to carry on, but the public policy has the biggest one, and it has to step up and be really the policy to make really private sector more responsible, and also us as a human being much more responsible for protecting the planet while having the nutrient we need and the lifestyle that we need. Over to you, PJ.
Yes, sir. Rasmus, I'll let you have the last word. You were talking a little bit about how you're learning from Asia and Africa, different techniques rather than just doing it one way. Are you optimistic that we're coming up with better solutions? So.
Better solutions, yes, but I'm pessimistic on the total. And it is correct, as Ismahan says, it's the will that's the limiting factor. So it's not money or technology. The solutions are basically there. We can do them even better. But the will and the lack of intelligence in humanity as a whole. I think the 20th century was the century of extraction. We prospered as a species from extracting natural resources. We just didn't realize or closed our eyes to the fact that we were taking out a loan from nature. And this century is the century of limitation. And the faster we realize that, the faster we get our act together, the less the negative impact. And I'm pretty pessimistic on our ability to do that as a species. I do think we'll come out on the other side. The question is in which shape. So that's overall pessimistic. However, we could sing and dance as the ship goes down, or we could work to actually that it doesn't happen. So that's kind of the path we are taking. We do believe it's possible, and radical changes, revolutions are made by the few. And I think that an initiative like this conference and the many other good initiatives, things are really happening. So in that way, I'm optimistic. but we're up against a lot of inertia.
All right. Well, thank you so much to all our panelists, and thank you so much for all the attendees, because I think you guys are an essential part of the solution that we're talking about. So thanks you, and we'll get on to the next panel.